Hey everyone, this is post-interview Kay popping in before we start to apologize for the sound quality of this episode. Everything seemed to be totally fine while we were recording, but I realized afterwards that I'd had my mic sensitivity way too high. So I sound really rough, even after doing what I can in post-production to mitigate it. KLAD, however, was a sensible human being with a sensibly configured mic, so all of the interesting and intelligent things that he says sound just fine. If you can put up with me sounding like I recorded with a walkie-talkie that's been thrown down a few flights of stairs, KLAD is very much worth sticking around for. Sorry again, but also, as always, thank you so much for listening. Let's get to it, shall we? Hello and welcome back to Happy Synthesizers. I'm your host, Kay, here with a man of many names and many talents. Those familiar with his original music will know him as DystoP, while others may recognize the handle Adlez27. He also goes by KLAD, short for Kiyoteru Lofe Adlez Dystopia, and I apologize if I mispronounced any of that. He's an UTAU expert who's created an extensive collection of resources for anyone looking to get into using the program, most notably St. Defoco's School of UTAU and several UTAUloids of his own. He's also been a significant contributor to the vocal synth community, having run multiple fan events and provided music to various collaborative projects. KLAD, please say hello. Have I missed anything?
Hello, it's Kiyoteru Lofe Adlez Dystopia, like loaf of bread.
Fun. Okay, I'll remember that. Well, easiest place to start is always the beginning. How'd you first discover vocal synth? Do you remember the first Vocaloid song you ever heard?
Oh yeah, this was like a million years ago, probably. Back in 2011 when I was 11. So when I was a kid in elementary school, we had our computer class where we learned how to use Scratch. So even after school, I would be playing with Scratch and I would be like making little games or animations and putting them on the Scratch website. What I also found on there, because I liked Zelda, there were other people who made like Zelda fan games. And then I saw that one of the people there had posted something about Vocaloid, and I was thinking, oh, what is this Vocaloid thing? I'm gonna look it up. So I looked it up, and then back then, when you looked up Vocaloid on YouTube, the first thing you would get is the Sakine Meiko cover of Honey,
Interesting.
which was featuring like the Kryptoniloids at the time, and that was my first Vocaloid song. I don't know if anyone still remembers it, but 2011 top result on YouTube.
Interesting.
And it was not very long after that that I discovered UTAU as well, where I found, oh, I can make my own voice banks. That's where I consider my true beginning to be, because just listening to a few songs, I don't feel like I really did much at the time. But then once I started finding out that I could do things myself, like make my own voice banks, make my own covers, that's when I really got into it.
Yeah, as someone who's always been a little bit intimidated by UTAU's complexity, and I've always stuck with the commercial engines, I'm always very interested to hear from people who have done as much with UTAU as you. It wasn't too much longer after that you started making your own voice banks. So you've done stuff with like full English and Japanese banks, but you've also created a sort of like Japanese plus rec list that you call Sword Heart Online. Can you explain first where did that name come from, and then a bit about the phonetic system itself?
Yeah, so Sword Heart Offline, it's kind of a long story as well. So I have been like doing like Japanese, English, a lot of other languages, like ever since the beginning. Like one of the first voice banks I released was a Japanese bank with English extras, and to this day I still just release Japanese banks with English extras. So the precursor reckless to this was actually a reckless called Lexus, which was supposed to mainly be like an X-Zampa based reckless that I could like extend with different sub-reckless that support specific languages. But I kind of abandoned that project, and Sword Heart Offline was something that I wrote in college because I was part of this Japanese pop culture student organization called Toshin. And before they changed the kanji in their name, their previous kanji was the characters for sword and heart. So that's where that comes from. And Offline was because I wanted to help them make official voice banks for their mascot characters. So in order to do this, I would have to help them offline in real life, coaching them through line by line, because the way this reckless is designed is not really meant to be it's not really something that I put out for other people to use. It's something that for my personal use, because my goals were, it doesn't matter if it's complex to configure because I'm the one who's configuring it, but it does matter if I can show them how to record it, do it in a quick session because it's really hot in the Philippines and I don't want to spend that much time without any fan or aircon. And the other goal was I wanted to have this be a voice bank with Japanese with some extras because, it was a Japanese pop culture organization. They liked Japanese songs, they liked Vocaloid. But I wanted to be able to do like English songs as well without forcing them to record an entire English voice bank. So this rec list was what I wrote. And I ended up continuing to use this for my own voice banks because it is still hot in the Philippines and I don't want to spend hours without any fan or air conditioning recording my UTAUs.
Two thoughts on that. First, I can certainly relate to not wanting to be in a hot recording booth. I'm in Canada, which obviously is not nearly as warm as the Philippines, but I'm a huge weenie about hot weather, so I definitely wouldn't want to be in a hot booth either. And thought number two is that I bet the sort of English extras would be really useful for... I mean, a lot of Japanese songs have little bits and pieces of English in them, so I bet it's useful for that.
Yeah. I mean, I do still use it for like fully English songs anyway, because I do kind of enjoy the challenge of using the voice banks and the way that I chose the extras. Most other people, they will just add a few extra consonants here and there, but I added one more extra vowel, and I found that with that one extra vowel, you can get really close to the pronunciation of English words.
What vowel is that?
Oh, it's the schwa. It's like the neutral central vowel.
Oh yeah, of course. So then, besides developing the voice banks, you've also got a bunch of, like, backstory for your UTAU characters, and I checked on your website, and it says the bios are still under construction, but you want to give the listeners a quick rundown of the lore?
Oh my goodness, there's so much lore. It's under construction because I haven't had the time to write the novels that I would need to go on those pages. Yeah, so, like, a couple of characters aren't on there yet, but I would say that my main UTAUs are... My main one right now is Dominic, and then... sort of the secondary tier of characters, there would be Sakura and Nina, Mita. Then the ones that are not on the website are Akoralu and Bexakaj, or Bexakai, up to you. And then there's the test voice banks, AWG and 1-3. And then there's a bunch of joke voice banks that I haven't put there. So, lore-wise, Dominic is a techno mage and a bassist in a metal band. So sometimes he does Magitech stuff, sometimes he does screaming stuff, sometimes he puts that together. And then his friend Sakura Nina used to be a joke voice bank, graduated to being a regular voice bank. So her story is that she used to be a magical girl in training, but then got kicked out of training due to committing magical crime. And
I love that.
A bunch of terrible stuff happened to her. Then she somehow became friends with Dominic, and now she has a normal job again and isn't being sucked into pyramid schemes.
Magical girls as a pyramid scheme. That is a fascinating concept, and I would love to talk about that more, but that would probably get us a bit off topic.
Yeah. Then Akoralu and Mexicaj, those are some... Well, they're not on the website yet, but those are like some less important characters. Like they're like second cousins once removed or something, but they live together and they're a couple of weirdos. Then Mita Sozo, she used to be my main UTAU, like when I was younger. But because all of those voice banks were recorded when I was younger, and because I can't update them anymore, now that my voice has changed, the story for her is that she's eternally stuck at 12 years old. So she's Dominic's younger sister. And even though Dominic and Sakura and Nina both age in real time, Mita still stays as 12 years old forever.
I'm reminded of, it's a thing in DC Comics that, like, even though the characters mostly stay the same age, for a long time, I think up until the New 52 reboot that they did, they had the character of John Constantine was, like, the only one who aged along with the actual publication. So he started out, like, late 20s or early 30s, but then by the time New 52 came around, he was meant to be, like, in his 50s. That's a bit of a tangent, but more random bits of not Vocaloid pop culture lore that I drop on this podcast and interviews. Moving on from your own UTAUloids, you've also got a creative circle that you've called the UTAU Black Supermarket, or Tubs. First, let's shout out to your friends. Who are some of the other folks involved?
Let's see. Who would I like to shout out the most? So some of my closest friends would be my girlfriend Grace Slate, who does a lot of Jinriki Yakuza voice banks, and also has their own channel, also has their own public server. Then another one of my close friends and my bandmate in Hexadecimate is Silver But Gold, sometimes known as Argentum Aurelius. So he's also got his own UTAUs. He's also does some music production, and then we have some collaborations on songs and covers that we're working on.
Cool. Listeners, I will also be interviewing Grace Slate. Not sure exactly when that will be published relative to this episode, but look forward to that.
Hell yeah.
Tubbs is the force behind St. Defoco's School of UTAU, of which you are, of course, the illustrious principal. What is this institution? What education does it offer, and how may new students enroll?
I would consider Tubbs and St. Defocos to be separate entities, actually, because Tubbs is actually quite a private group. And although I do like to share our affiliation, I do like to say, like, I'm part of Tubbs, or, put a little bathtub emoji on my name. It is still mostly like a very private friend group. So, like, for the most part, I was only shouting out my closest friends, but the rest of them, I prefer to keep them private. St. Defocos is a project that's been around for a very long time. Like, I think it might be 10 years now. So it started out on UTAU Forum, where I was just set up like a thread where people could, ask if they wanted to be tutored on how to do some stuff for UTAU, if they wanted to get some sort of UTAU lessons. And then someone set up a Discord server, and then I started to manage the Discord server. And this is like the main thing for St. Defocos now. So what we mainly offer is that we have the central part of it is the discussion channels and the feedback channels and the marketplace channels. So we have like a bunch of different categories where people can talk about. They can just ask their questions in a thread if they have like one really specific question that they need focused help on. There's like a voice bank discussion, making covers, writing music, visual arts, and tech support. And we've also got a feedback channel, which a system that I set up that I continue to use in a lot of other servers after I saw how effective it was, is that you can't post something for feedback until the previous person has received a comment on their work, something that is like useful and constructive, and actually remarks on a specific detail and not just, I guess it sounds nice. So this is where people can get like some guaranteed comments, get some criticism, like get some help with what they're working on. And we also have the marketplace channels where people can, offer things up for free or make requests, or they could collaborate, or they could trade, or they can share their commissions. So this is kind of internal to the server because we really want to encourage people to, interact with each other, collaborate with each other, get to know each other. And that's also why you're not really able to just like promote your own work without any kind of discussion or context or questions until you've already been chatting in the server for a while. Because I find that with a lot of other creative focused Discord servers, a lot of people will just hop in, promote their new thing that they're selling, and then hop out again without really talking to anyone. But because it's St. Defocos School of UTAU, our focus is on the discussion and the help and the collaboration part of it. And that's why we direct people to, make conversation with each other first and to talk in the discussion channels before they're able to self-promote.
That sounds like a really good system. I can definitely think of some Discord servers or similar things where it has been, as you described, sort of just like jump in, promote, jump out sort of thing. I also just want to specify, I didn't mean to imply that like Tubbs was like so closely affiliated with it. I just, as I understood it, I simply thought that some of the people that were in Tubbs were the ones that started, say, Defocos.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap in the groups of friends that do projects together, but that's kind of what happens when like you and your friends are all the kind of people who like to make lots of different projects.
That seems sort of apply to a lot of different fandom spaces. When you make friends, in a way, as a result of shared interests, or if your friends get into something together, then it will spill over into the broader fandom a little bit, which is fun. More fun fan content, hate that word, for everybody. So Saint Deifico seems like the biggest project from where I'm sitting, but clicking through the Tub's website and your personal subdomain, I found quite a lot of really good vocal synth related resources. Are there any of your like tutorials or anything that you're particularly proud of, or that you just think more people ought to know about?
Hmm, let's see. Because it has been a while since I've really done a lot of focus vocal synth stuff. A lot of stuff was kind of in the past, and then I got into other interests. I'd say that my other major project would probably be maintaining the Arpasing website. I know we wanted to discuss that later, but
Oh, that's
I
the
guess I could go into that now.
that's the next question I was planning on asking. Is like
Yeah.
you're an administrator on the website for ARPASing, and I personally have never actually understood the difference between ARPASing and like standard issue CVVC English. So could you explain that for me? Like I'm five.
It is CVVC. It is just a specific method of CVVC that is compatible with a lot of automatic tools that was made by the same developer who then went on to make SynthV. In fact, I would say that, Mora Sampler, which was made by Conruhua, which is a resampler for UTAU, and then Arpasing, which is the English method for UTAU, were kind of like prototypes before like the first version of SynthV, the one that came before SynthV Studio. And then when that came out, obviously the UTAU support dropped, but I continued to support it. Even way back when Arpasing was being first developed, I recorded this prototype voice bank for the testing phase, and that was the voice bank used to demonstrate and to release Arpasing to the public. And that was when I was about 17, and I also wanted to make some tutorials for that right away, so that's when I quickly drafted up the website, posted on NeoCities, and then I have the voice bank development tutorials. There's the tutorials on how to like use the voice banks in UTAU, how to write reckless. There's directories where people can submit their voice banks and their USTs and like publish their auto commissions as well. And I've just continued maintaining it in its current state, but I do have projects for the future. So mainly because of all of the new developments in the tech side of UTAU. Notably, there's OpenUTAU, which has the phonemizers, which uh, work a lot more in a lot more user-friendly way than the old Arpasing assistant. Like the Arpasing assistant, it was convenient-ish. It was able to convert words to phonemes, but you'd just end up having a million messy little notes in your project because of the way that classic UTAU worked. But now we can just have that be automatically handled on a sort of different layer than the notes and lyrics. We can just type in the words like normal, like any other synthesizer. So that's one of the things I wanted to write about. But then the things that I want to develop would be, first of all, VLabeler is for configuring UTAU voice specs, and I did contribute to some of the features. I contributed to the Japanese CVVC auto generator, and what I wanted to make next was a diphone auto generator, which would be able to generate basic configurations for Arpasing and similarly styled voice banks. And the reason I wanted to do this instead of the generator that's built into Mora Sampler is because what I have in mind is that you would be able to customize it. So it would not just be limited to like the standard English phonemes, but you could do other languages or you could add in your own custom extra phonemes, which I wanted to do in my own rec list. And because I don't really like the numbers that Mora Sampler gives sometimes. So if I were able to write my own algorithm for it, then I would have all the numbers that I wanted to start with. Then after that, I wanted to make there is already like two Arpasing phonemizers. There's the default one, and then there's ARPA Plus, which is made by, I believe it's pronounced Kadlaksa, which does support some customizations, but I've been working on in fully customizable English phonemizer where you would be able to define the phonemes as you want them and to automatically substitute them into words. Like, for example, if you've used Synthesizer V, you've noticed that there might be some phonemes in there that aren't in other English synthesizers, like the combination of T and R as tr. You could define that as a custom phoneme. I think it is already a custom phoneme in ARPA Plus, but in the English custom phonemizer, what it would do is that whenever a word has the TR in it, it would automatically substitute that in if you configured it that way. So it would be a lot more convenient way to add in those customizations that you would want to automatically apply. So that's another work in progress. And
Inter-
then,
Interesting.
yeah. And then on top of that, I just wanted to write my own custom reckless for my personal use because the existing tools don't suit what I want them to do. Therefore, I have to build them myself from the ground up because I can.
If you want something done right. I know
Oh,
that OpenUTAU is open source software, which for people who are listening that are not big into tech, it means that basically anybody can see like the original code and like make their own versions of it or whatever, whereas the original TAU is not. So how does the OpenUTAU being open source affect your process for creating these features as opposed to if you were trying to work on like the original version of UTAU?
yeah. So like with original UTAU, there is like a plugin API where people can extend it, but the thing is that in order to have like a pleasant or basically a usable experience in classic UTAU, you have to kind of rely on like a million external plugins to do all of these basic things that you really wish were just built in. And with OpenUTAU, they can just be built in. You can just type in regular words as lyrics. You can just draw the pitch directly onto the notes and all sorts of things like that. And I first noticed OpenUTAU quite a long time ago, actually before phonemizers were added. So I was some influence on how that API was developed, and I did write some of the first couple of phonemizers that were added, like the Japanese CBVC and the English to Japanese phonemizer. And I think those are a couple of the things that made it really pick up notice, because in Classic UTAU, if you wanted to use a Japanese CBVC voice bank, you either had to manually edit all the notes yourself, which was like really clunky and fiddly with all the teeny tiny notes, or you had to figure out how to use presamp, which a lot of people didn't really understand because all of the tutorials were in Japanese. I did get around to translating them, but like that was just before OpenUTAU became a thing. And now everybody's just switched to OpenUTAU because you don't have to really think about the process of how CBVC works anymore. You can just type in regular Japanese lyrics and then it'll do it for you. And I think that's one of the things that I contributed back then that made people really take note of it. And then the English to Japanese phonemizer, um, I made it as kind of a joke at first. Like, I thought, this is a bit of a silly concept, but, maybe people might like it. So the idea is that you would be able to type in English lyrics and then use Japanese voice banks to sing those English lyrics. So um, I made that, and then I did a little showcase on Twitter back when it was called Twitter. And because it seemed like it was quite well received, and then a lot of people in the server were saying, oh, I'd like for this to be built in, then I did make a pull request for that to be included with OpenUTAU. And then there are cases where I may make something that's like very customized, very specific to a single voice bank. And in that case, it's when I would make an external phonemizer. So that's another thing that I've been doing. There's like some that I did where I was just helping other people with their phonemizers. There's some that are like custom to my reckless. Like there's the Sword Heart Offline version E phonemizer, which is specific for Dominic, which is still a pain to use. I don't know why I did that to Dominic, but I regret it every day, but at least he exists. And then there is one that I did as a commission for someone who wanted to record a completely custom voice bank. So I wrote them the reckless, I did the configuration, and then I wrote the phonemizer. So that's also on my fork of OpenUTAU, that custom phonemizer.
That's amazing. So I said at the top that UTAU has always been pretty intimidating to me, but like it's only recently with all of the developments of OpenUTAU that I am like finally getting to like learn and able to access all of these different voices. Because like listeners, I really cannot stress enough, like notwithstanding the fact that like I am doing a podcast, I am enthusiastic about all this kind of tech, I am not a person who gets technological stuff. Like I've been fascinated listening to hear you talk with all this stuff, but like a lot of it is going over my head and it's just like it's so far outside of the scope of what I can understand. So but basically what I'm getting from what you've said so far is that you are one of the key people that I have to thank for the fact that I can actually, start to learn how to use UTAU voice banks. So thanks.
I mean, lately, I think a lot of the other developers have been contributing more often than I have. Like, I'm kind of just watching them now, but we're going to give a shout out to some of the other people who are active devs like Sakira, who started it out. There's Oxygen Dioxide, who added the diff singer support. There's Maiko, there's Lativi, who's been supporting some of the other phonemizers. So um, they're the ones who are like really continuing to take it forward after I did a few things in the beginning, but they're the ones who are doing the most work on it right now.
But you're the one I'm talking to, so
Yeah.
if I ever get the chance to interview them, I'll be sure to pass along thank yous to them as well.
Yeah.
So
I would say that like my understanding of technology is it's largely because I basically grew up with vocal synth. Like I discovered like UTAU at a very young age, and that kind of forced me to learn all of these things. I did not know anything about like the tech, about writing music, about recording vocals, about writing code, like about linguistics, like basically anything. All of that was stuff that I learned over the years through vocal synth, and it has kind of been the majority of my life, I think.
which is all the more impressive to me. Gotta admire somebody who is driven by their passions to learn, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, UTAU is kind of your main gig, but as you keep saying, vocal synth in general, you do work with, other engines sometimes, Vocaloid and Synthesizer V, and like, when you got in touch, I did actually recognize your username and stuff, and I admit my brain kind of went, oh yeah, it's that guy who really likes Hiyama Kiyoteru, and like, when we were talking one-on-one, you did say you're not...
fan fiction. It's not good.
Yeah, well, when we were talking one-on-one, you did say that you're not quite as obsessed as you used to be, but like, you still worked with him long enough to, I think, pretty single-handedly boost his profile among non-Japanese fans. So like, what was it about him that you liked so much?
I think it was mostly like discovering that he has extensive lore and like feeling like I wanted to build on that. Because a lot of other commercial voice banks, a lot of the Vocaloids, are like, oh, this is just kind of a mascot character. You can do whatever you want. It's open to your interpretation. But then Kiyoteru like already had all of this established lore, and I thought, oh, this is something that I can support and essentially make fan content of instead of having to do this, entirely from my own ideas. And I didn't even used to write rock music before Kiyoteru. Like I was mostly an electronic musician. I even came up with a Kiyoteru design that I was going to use for electronic music. But because of the lore of him having band members, I thought, okay, I can use this as a framework for how to arrange music for a rock. What instruments do I need to use? I'm gonna have guitar because Kiyoteru has a guitarist. There's going to be bass because Kiyoteru has a bassist, and so on like that. And that is actually kind of how I learned how to write rock music. It's because I wanted to write songs for Kiyoteru's band. And I don't know, I feel like I was just kind of possessed by the spirit of Kiyoteru into writing all of these things. I just always kept on feeling like there aren't enough Kiyoteru songs out there. I need to make more of them. There aren't enough Kiyoteru projects. I need to do more of them. And that's kind of what got me into him. And I felt like it was especially important for me at the time because I am a transgender person, so I am FTM, and at the time I was getting really unhappy with my voice. I was kind of abandoning UTAU because I didn't really want to record more voice banks with my voice as it was back then. But because I had Kiyoteru, I could represent myself and do creative work using his voice instead to represent me. And I ended up kind of stealing his name too. So I think it's really valuable for me to have a character that I could support and a voice that I could use to express myself when I couldn't use my own.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of vocal synth at its best, right? Providing that voice and platform for those who don't feel comfortable using, their baseline self, for lack of a better term. So after all of that stuff, Kiyoteru was some of the focus for some of the collaborative albums that you spearheaded. There was Sensational in 2017 and Kiyoteru Quest and Teacher Student Android Association in 2019. And as a side note, that last one is a delightful name. What was it like organizing those projects?
Oh my goodness, it's rough. There's a reason I don't do them anymore. I mean, it was fun at the time, but it was pretty difficult. Like, you really have to, like, first of all is the recruiting, and then you get a lot of people who are interested, but then the harder part is like the follow through and like making sure that all of the stuff that gets finished, and that if people drop out, if there's someone to replace them to get the thing finished. And it was it was really difficult. But it was fun at the time, like being able to do this because I wanted there to be more Kiyoteru songs in the world. And this is one of the ways that it could happen. It's like by bringing people together on these collab albums. Because before that, I did like participating in collab albums. Like often I would use that as a way to motivate myself to finish a song, to use voice banks I haven't used before. They were mainly UTAU projects. So, and it was a little bit of publicity for me because, this was being seen by the collaborators on the album. This was being seen by the album getting promoted to other people. And then it was a way to kind of put yourself out there with a lot of other really talented people just by being able to contribute one song to this bigger project. So that was my inspiration, and that's what I got into. And then after a few albums, I got tired. But then I did do like a solo Kiyoteru album, and then that was kind of it.
I tip my hat to you and your efforts. Like, writing an entire album, even if it's just the one, is more albums than I have ever written, so...
Yeah, I was supposed to do another album this year for it, the February album writing month. It's 14 songs in 28 days. I got 3 songs in, and then I kind of fell off.
I mean, again, more songs than I wrote in February. If you've got the songs written and stuff, that kind of brings me up to my second to last question. You've talked a bit about, like, sort of your long-term projects that you're working on, but, like, is there anything sort of coming in, like, the near-ish future? Any projects or song releases for us to look forward to, keep an eye out for?
I don't really have anything vocal synth related to promote because for the most part I've been indulging in my other hobbies.
Anything else you want to promote? Might as well.
Read my Just Roll With It Riptide fanfictions. They're actually good. Not the Kiyoteru ones.
Hey, if you send me a link to that, I'll put it in the episode notes, so for sure.
My goodness. Yeah, I actually, one of the songs I wrote for this past the album writing challenge was a fan song for that show. So if you want to listen to some of my music, there's that, and hopefully that will inspire you to read the other fanfics and to listen to the original show.
Sick. Last question I ask everybody. If you could get any singer in the world to record a voice bank for the engine of your choice, whose voice would you want to sample?
Courtney LaPlante from Spirit Box.
Huh. I know vaguely what, like, I know Spirit Box is a band. I can't say that I've listened to much of their music, but clearly I ought to.
Yeah, they're like a modern metalcore band. They've got really, really good music. They've been getting quite popular recently. They're basically in the 2020s. It's that recent. And the reason I think of Courtney LaPlante is because Synth V is now able to support screaming vocals. And knowing that, we would be able to get like a really good model of her voice because she is absolutely fantastic at a lot of kinds of screams and a lot of kinds of clean singing. Like she has really beautiful, soft, clean singing. She can do powerful notes too, but she's also got these absolutely brutal screams that like really cut through a song. And I think it would be fantastic to have that kind of vocal represented. Like not just like male metal vocals, which are the most common kind, but like female metal vocals as well.
I am entranced by the mental picture that you're painting, my dude. That is a great way to end this. But yeah, on that note, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, cool. I'll link to KLAD's work in the show notes and see you around. Thanks.
Thank you.
Special thanks to KLAD for sitting down to speak with me. If you enjoy what I'm doing, please follow the pod and leave a review if you're feeling generous. It really helps. If you're feeling even more generous, head on over to patreon.com/happysynthesizers, where you can get early episodes for just $2 a month. Besides that, check the links in the description for transcripts, sources, and social media. Happy Synthesizers is written and produced by Kay Judson. The theme music is Ivan Polka, arranged with inspiration from Loy Tuma and Otomania.